let's talk about 3 artifacts. So now we can finally move on to our artifacts here. So 3 artifacts. The first artifact is our product backlog. We have to have a product backlog. This is a backlog. This product backlog includes the items and product items that we want to develop by the end of whole sprints, the whole process. Okay, not one sprint, and whole process. Let's say that we finish one sprint, second sprint, and we finish a product at the end of 10 sprints. Okay, let's say at the end of 10 sprints, and we want to write down all the items, all the features that we want to see in that product backlog chart. So in this representation, you see a Scrum board. A Scrum board includes this product backlog. On the left-hand side, you see the orange color user story 1, user story 2, user story 3. These are the features that we want to build at the end of product development lifecycle. These are the features that we want to see in our product. So this is a product backlog. We write down what we want, and we just put it up there in a divided whiteboard or a wall. We just write everything down on a sticky note, and we put it up there. Or you can simply use Jira too. So Jira looks exactly like this one, like this representation piece. So this product backlog, everything that we want to see in a product, we want to write it down. So how do we write it down? It happens in a sprint planning meeting. So we just sit down with the product owner, Scrum team, and the Scrum Master. We want to write down what we want to accomplish by the end of this product development lifecycle. And who is the number one person to ask questions? Is product owner, because product owner is internal customer of this scenario, and he says the last word always. So let's go to the jump to the second artifact. Product backlog was the first one, and second one is, as you can guess, is a sprint backlog, because as I mentioned, Scrum is all about prioritization. We need to prioritize everything that we have in order to laser focus on what we are going to work on, what we are going to commit, right? So let's say we have 120 items in a product backlog, right? 120 items that we want to develop. We want to deliver by the end of the product development lifecycle, and we divided this 120 items onto sprints, right? Let's say we have 6 months of product development time, and that's what we are going to commit on. And on the 6 months, we are going to start with the only sprint 1, and which is going to take not longer than 4 weeks. So how we're going to do that? So we have to prioritize our product backlog items. And we have to start working first on the prioritized items in the first sprint. So how we prioritize that? In a sprint planning meeting, okay? In a sprint planning meeting, the outcome of the sprint planning meeting is called sprint backlog. So we will have a backlog list that includes all the items that we want to deliver by the end of that sprint. And we are going to do this for each sprint. That's why it's very important, because we cannot focus, we cannot laser focus on product items in each sprint if we don't have a prioritized backlog list. Okay, we have to have a sprint backlog before every sprint starts. And This is the second artifact. First one was product backlog item, and the product backlog item, when it's prioritized, it turns into sprint backlog item, and specifically created by all team members ahead of the sprint, beginning of the sprint. Okay, before the beginning of the sprint. So, and the third one, last artifact, is Burndown Chart. Burndown Chart is important. Why is important? Because most of the Scrum Masters, if some of you work in a Scrum environments in a big corporations and enterprise level companies, when they apply Scrum, they don't know how to track the performance. They don't know how to measure the performance at all. Okay, and that's another thing that comes up. That's it's not a disadvantage of Scrum, but it's just because Scrum is so simple, and Scrum always supports the simplicity. That's why we don't use great tools or systems or communication tools to report the performance. So what we do is simply create a burndown chart. Burndown chart shows you, or shows everybody, it's a communication tool, shows the team and the executives that how much work is left. On the left hand side, you see the sum of task estimates. How much work is left? You can put here the story points, or you can put here days, you can put here hours, anything that represents the time, that you can put it up here. Anything that represents the estimated amount of remaining work. So this is what it is on the left hand side. On the right hand side, then you see down below the iteration timeline. That shows you how many days are left. Okay, how many days are left to finish the current sprint. By the end of the sprint, you see in this example is 20. By the end of this sprint, this all product backlog items on the left-hand side needs to be completed and needs to hit ground zero. You see that red, the blue one is the perfect ideal world. Okay, the blue one is ideal world, and the red one is actual world. What's actually really happening? So after 5 days, you see here like 25 days of work left, or 25 story items, or 25 backlog items. It just depends on how you want to represent it in front of the other team members. So by the end of 20 days, there is no work left. So that's something that you want to show as a performance indicator. Okay, and another question and says like, what application, what apps and tools can we use for Scrum? We don't want to deal with a set of tools since we already got a few for productivity. That's very true. So in Scrum, so let's say in a very simple Scrum environment. Okay, very simple Scrum environment. I will give you another example of how we can get this complicated too, because some enterprise level, especially enterprise level, large scale companies use different Scrum tools. But to put it simply, we have to have a Scrum board. Like in a presentation that I showed, this Scrum board is, I think, the most important communication tool that we can use for Scrum, because Scrum is based on inspection, adaptation, and transparency. Those are the 3 Scrum pillars Scrum is built on: inspection, adaptation, and transparency. The transparency, the third one, can be achieved by using a Scrum board as a communication tool. So we can simply use a whiteboard and then divide the whiteboard into 4 different sections, and then simply on the very left-hand side we can put the product backlog items, and on the right hand side to do side that we can write down on the sticky notes. We can write down the items that we have prioritized and we have committed to work on the next upcoming sprint. This Scrum board changes in every sprint. This is not something that sticks there and always the same. It always active, it always moves. So what we do is simply create the Scrum board for each sprint at the very beginning of the sprint, and we simply move the prioritized backlog items that we have committed to work on this to-do section. And when we begin working on those items, we just simply slide them to the right-hand side under doing. So it means that it's currently in progress. So until we finish them, we work on them, we keep the sticky notes and product and sprint backlog items in here in this doing section. And when we are completed, when we are done with those each items, we simply move them on the right hand side and to done. So this is this really helps a lot to keep everybody on the same page, because Scrum teams are always like, hey, what are we working on, guys? Hey, what are the items that we are working on now? Hey, what is the plan for next week? Kind of thing. So we have to keep it very transparent. We have to keep the communication flow between each team members. And naturally, the communication and the information needs to flow. So this Scrum board helps a lot. Okay, and when we completed an item, we just simply just slide them to done, and then these items are done now. So we can simply work on other to-do items or just focus on the doing items. Okay, so this is the very first and very basic and maybe the most critical tool that we use in Scrum environment. And so luckily, we don't have a lot of tools to use in Scrum, because Scrum supports simplicity, as I mentioned. So, but like additional to this, we can use Jira. And Jira is simply like Jira has another Scrum board like very similar to this, but it's of course is for more like complicated environments. So let me show you another Scrum board like more complicated than this, because this one looks like something like, hey, I'm going to move to my house next week, and these are the things like call the mover guys, or just pick up the garbage or whatever, like, or cleaning the house kind of. That's how simple is this one. But in real life, looks like this. So this is something that I found on the internet. Honestly, this was not my personal experience. And you see the projects in process and completed. So simply at the very middle of the Scrum board, they divided those into 4, and in the very middle that you see in the center of in process, which is doing, which is the current representing the items, the product items that are under progress right now, the team is working on. And on the very left hand side, you see the projects. You also see the team members, sometimes they added, and you also see the completed, the done section, that these items are done, are completed, okay? And simply they are working on those in-process items. So this is how it works. It works and how it looks. So additional to this, in a more like techie kind of a tool that they use is mostly Jira, and sometimes they use Confluence. And in order to like actually, it helps more in some document sharing kind of things, but the very first and the most important is, and the must tool is a Scrum board. This is the most important tool, and so I think it helps, and I think I successfully answered your question, Garrett. So this is the most important tool. So you can simply put it up onto a whiteboard, or if you don't have a whiteboard, you can just put it up on a white, like something like very similar to that. Something like you can simply grab a pen and just put it up there. So, but just keep in mind, it's important. In a Scrum environment, it's important to keep transparency high, right? We just mentioned that. So you want to keep this Scrum board in somewhere that people can actually see, right? People can actually look, and it should be on the walkway, like somewhere that people is just passing by or something in front of it. Okay, so it cannot be something that are on the side. Hey, on a meeting room. So sometimes, so let me give you an example from my experience, and I have experience in my in the company that I was doing consultancy, Scrum mentoring, and previously, that they have created a Scrum board like this on the whiteboard, and the whiteboard is in the meeting room. Like, doesn't make any sense at all, because this is in the meeting room and it stays there, and you cannot erase it. Okay, and the real Scrum team is on the other side of the building. So when they need something, they have to come up. When they need any information and about the workflow, about the next items that they're gonna commit on next time, they have to walk there and they have to take a look at it. And that I told them that doesn't make sense at all.